Okay, in this second section, we're going to be talking about a key problem that is affecting the Millennial Development Goals. So I think that probably the biggest thing that's affecting them right now is government, more specifically, who's in charge. We see some indicators uh, that show that, this is affecting everything when you have this dictator. For instance, if we are looking at empowering women, there's some really interesting data actually that talks about um, the number of seats held by women in national parliament um, in Suriname and in leadership positions or whatever. And it was staying about 18 or 19% in the early 2000s. I mean, it jumps up to 25%. But then in 2010, which is when their dictator uh, got reelected, that guy who had, kind of taken over during their military rule, it dropped to 9.8%. And it hadn't been that low since 1990 when it was actually 8%. So just that alone is really showing how having this dictator in charge is definitely going to affect women's empowerment. Um, Also, when it comes to education, which is also one of the big things we talked about, it's completely stagnant. There's no improvement whatsoever as far as educating women. Like their education isn't awful. I mean, they're around 48, 47-ish%. But it's staying consistently that way. We're not seeing much approval. We'd like to get up to the 50% or whatnot. Um, Now let's see. When it comes to our Millennial Development Goal 4, reduce child mortality rate, um, the main thing that's going to affect this year, I believe, will be hospitals and infrastructure, things like that. But the problem is also what's not changing is the amount of money that the government is putting into healthcare. Um, of course, it was low, back when they had military rule back in the 80s. But then because of their um, instability government-wise, it's kind of stayed stagnant. I mean, we're in like 11%. Uh, it jumped up to 13% in 2006, but it's basically staying around 11 and 12% consistently. So we're not seeing any improvement there. Um, Also, something that can affect both. That's something that can affect both the maternal health and child mortality. Now, the number of hospital beds, that's also kind of a big deal. Um, it's staying about consistently like 3 hospital beds per 1,000 people. There is a drop down in 2009 to 2.6. So still not great there either. We're still just not seeing the improvement that we would need in order to start reducing these goals or reducing these numbers, which are the targets of the Millennial Development Goals. Um, Goal 4 is reduced by 2/3 the infant child mortality rate, and the goals for improving maternal health are to reduce by 3/4 and to have universal access to primary health care. None of those are we really seeing being accomplished here. Um, I think a lot of that has to do with the government. No one's taking charge and everything is very stagnant. Now, if this continues to be the case, the outcome is pretty basic. We're just not going to see the improvement that we need to see in these countries. Um, so basically, that's where we're headed. I mean, that we basically need to find some way to fix government or implement new government or new procedure that will help improve these areas and the country overall.